Welcome to Garden Delights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension. Today we're going to be talking about figs, and we'll also hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent. He's going to talk a little bit more about that fig tree that we have in our community gardens. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. Welcome back to Garden Delights. Today we're going to be talking about figs, and we're also going to be making a fig bundt cake, and so I'm excited about that part of it. But let's talk about those figs. One thing good about it is we even have a fig tree right here close by work, and I'm excited that I got to go and get some of those figs off of that tree. And when you're looking at figs, you want to make sure that you're picking them from a great tree that we have, but let's talk about how good they are for you. They are wonderful for you as far as fiber, potassium, cholesterol-free, fat-free, sodium-free. So they're loaded as far as you eating a fig per day if you could find one. And also when you are selecting those figs, you want to look for the figs that have a little bit of that red tint like you're looking right here at this one. And also too, you want to have a little bit of wrinkle to it because that tells you it's going to be ready to eat. And you want it also to be slightly plump. In other words, you don't want to see it oozing out with some of the part of it oozing out because that tells you the fig's probably a little bit more on the ripe side. And so you want to look at the fig when you're picking it. Even at the grocery store, you want to look at the figs, turn the container upside down, look underneath, make sure you don't see any figs going bad as far as oozing out also. Now as far as storage, figs store very short periods. So when you're picking those figs, or if you have them at the store, they're usually containers. So what you want to do is try to lay the figs out single layer because they will bruise very easily. So you want to lay them out single layer, and you can put them on your counter for a little bit, like one day. And then after that one day, you need to decide what you want to do with them, and that's going to be like put them in your refrigerator for 1 to 2 more days. Now, you can freeze figs and bring them out later to make those fig preserves or to use them in a cake like I'm going to use today. But just remember that they do bruise very easily. Figure out how you can store them in your countertop. You can even put a paper towel on top and put some more figs on top just to have a little cushion as far as the one fig's on top of the other. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to store them. Now, as far as the figs go, you can eat about 5 figs, and these are 4 right here, but about 5 of them is going to give you about 110 calories. So you can see great fiber, great potassium if you're looking for that. Also, they're very good in calcium. So when you're eating 5 figs, you're going to eat about 110 calories, but you're going to get so many good nutrients out of those figs. So when we come back, you're going to see Frank at that fig tree that he actually pruned a long time ago and see how wonderful it looks right now. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights.
Okay, today I thought we'd come back up here and take a look at our fig. If you recall, back in the winter, we came up here and pruned this fig, and it had grown, you know, probably 20 feet tall or higher, and we couldn't get the figs out of it without a stepladder, so we pruned it back to about the 5-foot level, and we cut it way back. A lot of people were accusing us of killing the fig after we got through doing that, but I just wanted to let everybody know that the fig is fine and it came back. We're starting to get some ripe figs on here. Lots of small figs that haven't developed yet, but it's doing good. So if you recall, when we pruned it, we left a couple of branches that we didn't cut so that it would start early in the spring. It would start bringing the juices back from the roots and get the whole thing back like it should be. And so those will get pruned off this winter, and we'll also come in here this winter and we'll cut this back to the 5 or 6 foot height so we can keep it under control. But we won't have to do any drastic pruning like we did last time. if you recall,
what we wanted to do
all that we had to cut off of it. So I just thought we'd come back up here today. We got some small figs on here. There's one starting to get ripe. This one right here is starting to get ripe. If you look back up under here, there's all sorts of small figs coming on. Probably not the best production this year. There's one starting to turn a little bit brown. Obviously it had to recover from all that pruning we did, but it has recovered and it's doing fine. So that's what we wanted to look at here today, is just how the fig has come back from being pruned. And I think now what we're going to do is walk over here and take a little look at the garden. We're getting ready for our fall garden, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So let's go over here to the garden. Okay, we're up here in the garden now. Sometimes our fall garden sneaks up on us. You know, you can grow most anything later in the season as long as you're aware of our first killing frost date, which is about November the 17th, give or take a week or so. So you back up however long it takes your vegetable to mature. Add about 2 weeks to it, because in the fall the days are shorter and the sunlight's not quite as intense. And then that will put you back on most things. It's going to put you back to late August or the 1st of September to get this stuff planted, so that it will mature and be ready before the frost gets here. So that's how you got to plant it. Now, we've got some beds here that are still growing. Some bell peppers are growing here. We've got a bed over here that they've planted some late beans in, and they're going to make those beans. They planted those back about the middle of July, and so they'll be picking beans before the frost kills them, because those beans are not going to make it through the frost. We still got some beds with some sweet potatoes in it that we haven't dug. There's some beds where people are still picking okra, so it all hasn't converted over here, but we're about in the process of converting this garden over from our summer vegetables into our fall vegetables. And you see some of the beds have been taken up already and getting ready. We'll be doing some soil testing in some of them, and I still have people call me up or come see me and say, how much lime should I put in my garden? And you know I don't know the answer to that unless you do a soil test, so we'd just be guessing. Your guess is as good as mine if we're not going to do a soil test. So soil testing will be done. In the winter time we can control our weeds pretty good. We're still probably on some of the vegetables, we'll still put down some of this weed barrier cloth to try to help control it. So that's basically what's going on here in the garden. We're getting ready to store all our tomato cages and that sort of thing till we get into the next year's garden. And we'll still be harvesting some eggplants over here behind me, okra in several different places. The corn that was in this bed right here is pretty much done. So it'll be a transition of finishing up the harvest on what we had in for the spring and get the plantings in the ground for the fall garden. So if you're not thinking about your fall garden, you need to be thinking about it. And if you haven't thought about it at all, it might be too late before the freeze gets here. So I think what we're going to do now is go inside and see what Susan is fixing for us.
Welcome back to Garden Delights. Today we're going to be making a fig bundt cake. It's so good and it smells really good. All my ingredients right now, it smells so good. So the first thing you're going to do in the recipe, it's going to tell you to roast some almonds, and it's about a cup of them. So I've already roasted my almonds, and so it is going to tell you in the recipe, if you have a food processor, that's what it's going to tell you to use. So if you don't have one, you can also use a blender. But I'm going to be using a food processor. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add my almonds into the food processor. And also you're going to use a bundt cake, so you do want to flour and grease the bundt cake. And you also want to set your oven for 350. So you want to go ahead and do that too. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on, and we're going to go ahead and process these up. So we have them, and what we're trying to do is they're going to almost look like flour. So I'm going to be crushing them up pretty crushy as far as that goes. So just, it's going to make a lot of noise. And I'm going to stop it just so you can get an idea. It's still pretty thick as far as the nuts are pretty big. So I'm trying to get them even smaller. In other words, what I'm trying to do is to get it almost like flour, so it's almost going to, because I'm going to end up adding the flour to this. So I'm going to keep going just a little bit more. And let's look at it one more time. I'm going to go just a little bit further, but if you could see, it's kind of connecting on the outside of the inside of that container. So it's very fine looking, and that's what I'm looking for. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I think it's what I want. So the next part of the recipe is going to tell you need to put in flour, and it's 2½ cups of all-purpose flour. You're also going to put in some cinnamon, which is a ½ teaspoon. You're also going to put in 1½ teaspoons of baking soda, and your little salt, which is about 1/4 teaspoon, and this is all in this container right here. But first, what I want to do is go ahead and add my flour to this mixture. So I'm just going to dump it in, which makes it really easy because it doesn't really mess up too many of your bowls either. So I'm just going to stack this inside here, put the lid back on. Oh, and if you could smell the cinnamon, it just hit me. It smells really good. So we're going to put the lid back on, and I'm going to pulse just a little bit more because I want to incorporate all those almonds into the flour mixture. And it makes a really good paste. I wouldn't say a paste, but it just makes the flour just so fine, so it works really good in the cake. So I'm gonna do it just one more time, and I'm gonna stop. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for in the mixture. And I'm gonna see if I can take this off so you can see this, so you'll know what to look for. So if you can see, all that almonds are mixed in with that flour, and if you wouldn't know this, you wouldn't even know that I have almonds in this flour. So what we're going to do is leave it like this. The next thing, I'm going to go ahead and take this out, the blade, so I can end up using this to dump it right into there. So I'm just going to lay that right into there. So the next part of your recipe, it's going to tell you to mix up the oil and the sugar, and this is a ½ cup of oil. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this into the container, the cup here, and then I am also going to add the sugar, and the sugar is 1 1/4 cups. So I'm going to add that to there. Let's see if I can stack some of these over here, as so. And then I am going to get my blender, and I'm going to hook it up because I need to mix this with the blender, and eventually I'm going to end up putting the flour and the sugar and the oil and the eggs all mixed up together. So we'll just switch out with this one so I can get this going. So we're going to mix up the sugar and the oil, and I just want it really combined really well because I'm going to end up adding the eggs, which is 2 eggs to this recipe. and we want to do it one at a time. So I just want to kind of get this really incorporated really well. So after I do that, and this is about where I want it, I'm going to add in these eggs one at a time. I'm going to see if I can just dump one, if they don't come all at one time. Awesome. I'm going to mix this one in with that sugar and oil. And I haven't added the vanilla or the almond extract, and I will tell you, I'm smelling it and it smells so good. And I can't wait to add it to this mixture. So you're going to add the other egg. And I'm just going to beat it around. And I just want to beat it till it's kind of fluffy. So that's what I'm looking for. And this is going to be that moisture that's going to hold this cake together, but also it's going to be the part that I'm going to add the flour to also. All right, so that looks really good. So I'm going to stop with that. All right, I'm going to put my mixer right here and let it drip into the bowl. And the next part of the cake part is, this is when you're going to add that stuff that smells so good, that extract, and that's the vanilla, and that is almond. I've already put it together in one container, so I'm going to go ahead and dump that into that mixture, and I'm going to mix it around. And it smells so good. So I'm just going to mix it because I do want to make sure the extract is really mixed in with that sugar and oil. All right, so that looks really good. So the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to alternate the flour and add it to this mixture. But we're also going to be alternating with a half a cup of lemon juice. But before I do that, let me just trade out a little bit and try to stack some of this over to the side. I am going to let you know that for this cake, I'm going to slide this over. Use me a paper towel so I can catch those drippings from the container there, my mixer. Okay, so in this recipe too, it's going to be a cup of chopped up figs, and I have almost a cup here, and I would say it's close to it, but I am going to show you just how to chop one up. And it's really important that you chop it up really fine, because if I can find my knife, I think I found it. So you just want to try to chop it up really fine. I like these type knives, and you know, a fig is such a pretty fruit. You know, if you just look at it and you're slicing it, it would go on all kind of things, and it's just great to eat. I mean, you could put it on a salad, but it's going to be great in this cake. So what I'm going to do is just kind of chop it up, and really you just want to chop it up as fine as you can get it, because you don't want big chunks in the cake. Of course, it's going to cook, and you'll never know. Probably there's a lot of figs in there, but I love figs, so really it's just a great way to moisten the cake. And I'm going to move this off a little bit, keep chopping. So we just want to put all these figs in there. And also too, it's important that you get a fig that's also ripe, because you don't want something that's green, because it's not going to taste as good in that cake also. So I think I have this good enough as far as chopped up, and I'm just going to add this to my other mixture. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back around. And I am going to alternate the flour with the moisture and also with the lemon juice. And I want to try to alter it back and forth, and I want to keep the moisture kind of going as I add the flour. So what I'm going to do now is dump just a little bit of that flour in. Just enough to get me where I can mix it. And I'm going to mix it up. And while I'm mixing, and it gets pretty moist, and I get some of that flour incorporated into the mixture, I am going to add just a little bit of that lemon juice. And then I'm going to mix that around. And I want to make sure I mix it up really well. So I'm going to kind of scrape my sides just a little bit, because I do want to make sure I have all that flour mixed up into the wet ingredients. So once I've done that, I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to add some more flour. And I'm going to do this around. I have just a little bit more I'm going to add to it and finish it out. All right, once I see it kind of getting moist with the flour, that's when I'm going to add a little bit more of my lemon juice. And this cake is really easy to make. It's very tasty. The good thing is it doesn't have an icing to it, so you could make icing if you wanted to, but what I'm going to do today is just sprinkle a little bit of powdered sugar on it, and that is going to be your option if you want to do it that way also. All right, so that is incorporated really well, so I'm going to cut it off again, and I'm going to add just a little bit of the rest of that flour in there. So that's all my flour, and I see just a little bit more. I'm going to put that back in, and I'm going to end up with my lemon juice. So I'm going to make sure this is mixed in really well. And you can see it's still got a lot of moisture to it, and it comes out really nice, especially after you're going to add the figs to it. So I'm going to go ahead and pour the rest of my lemon juice in there. That's going to wet it up just a little bit more. And it's going to tell you to stir in the figs. So that's what we're going to do last. So I think I have this pretty much like I want it. And I'm going to cut my mixer off and try not to make a big mess. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to add the cup of chopped up figs. So I've added those to the mixture, and I'm going to take a wooden spoon here, and I'm just going to stir it in. So you just want to get them all mixed in, because you know when they cook, they're going to be brown just like the batter, but they're going to be tasty. The cinnamon, the extract, all that stuff mixed in together is going to be so good. So what you're going to do is have it mixed up just like this. As you can see, everything's finely chopped. And what you're going to do is take this batter, you're going to pour it into a bundt-sized pan, but make sure it is greased and floured before you do that. And then you're going to put it in your oven. Make sure it's spread out really even on your bundt cake. And then you're going to put it in your oven for about 35 to 45 minutes, depending on your oven. And the best way to tell if your cake is done is to take a toothpick, insert it, and make sure it comes out clean. So, we'll see you back in just a little bit, and we'll be tasting that bundt cake. Welcome back to Garden Delights. Well, Frank, we have a fig bundt cake, and the figs, you know, came from that fig tree that we have right close to our office.
That's right. We talked about that fig. You know, we pruned that fig last year pretty drastically, and so I thought we'd do this story about it just to show people it is still alive.
And it's still alive.
And it's loaded with figs.
It is.
And that smells really good, so go ahead and cut it.
I know, I am just ready to eat some of it because it smells so good. So if you want a bigger piece, you just let me know, but I'll start off with that.
Yeah, let's start with that.
But before I do that,
another piece.
I have to do a little sprinkle with powdered sugar because we don't have any icing on it, so we're going to put
just what I was hoping
low-fat icing onto it. Oh, and it seems so moist. And it's just, I don't know, it's, oh, sorry about that. It smells awesome.
Good. That sugar just enough.
It's just enough to add to it, but not enough to overdo it. That is good.
And we'll have to send a copy of this show to Eric Smith, because he came up here and did all the work cutting the fig. Now we're eating
the fig cake.
Eating the fig cake.
There you go. It's really, really moist. You can tell from I put a cup of almonds in it. I kind of grounded them up really fine like the cake flour, and so it gives that almond taste to it, but it's still, you can taste those figs too.
Yep.
So you're gonna love this cake recipe. Check out the website for the recipe. And Frank and I will see you next time on Garden Delights. I'm gonna have to take another bite though.
I highly recommend it.